this presentation is for you. So please sit back, relax. If you can, close your email, close the other screen, put your phone on vibrate, flip it over, and do your best to be distraction free. It's your turn, your time to learn, focus on yourself. And I want you to be able to afford that with yourself so we can spend the next 35, 40 minutes together. Great, thanks, Donna. I will take some questions near the end. I've also got a private Zoom Q&A that's scheduled for September 9th. So if you want to be part of that Zoom session where we can just have a chance to ask more questions based on your afterthoughts, email me at support@hazardscape.com and I'll get you on the invite list. And so I'll check the comments as we go along here and do my best to answer questions as we go along. So don't be afraid to ask questions. And in order for you to be able to sit back and relax, I also have a summary guide of everything in the presentation. So again, please email me afterwards at support@hazardscape.com and I'll get that guide out to you. Hopefully my clicker will work. Let's go here. All right, so yeah, I think by now we can all agree that there have been enough emergency management conference speakers who have told us that lessons identified are not lessons learned, and they aren't going to be learned overnight. In fact, a lot of the lessons identified never become learned. And that means we either continue to make a lot of the same mistakes over and over, or they take so long to learn, we end up burning people out and spending way too much time and money on some of the things that we're only focused on, which is mainly a little bit too much on response and recovery. We've got to get out of that cycle of focusing solely on response and recovery. And we know that to be true. We've all seen the conferences on it. And then there's this. I care about this subject quite a bit. I'm fairly passionate about it because so much of my career in disaster and emergency management has been focused on responding to and recovering from disasters. Rarely did I spend a lot of time in prevention, mitigation, and preparedness because we were always responding, we were always recovering, and that was followed by post-incident meetings, reviewing draft post-incident reports. Then I'd get pulled into the project management process. And through the project management process, I was part of numerous meetings that turned into venting sessions. They were very operationally focused, and they did not have a lot of purpose set out in the beginning. So most people didn't even know why they were attending some of the meetings. It was a vicious cycle. And what was really frustrating is we had a model to work from, but nobody really knew how to use it or what activities to do to make it work because everyone was, head down in this cycle of disaster, post-incident response, project management, and it would just go over. And then, project management focuses on the project. It doesn't guarantee productive results or relationships and healthy opposition, which we know are required for creativity and innovation to occur. In 2019, the Emergency Management Strategy for Canada was released. It builds on the foundational principles that are articulated in the federal, provincial, territorial EM framework and the SDI framework. The strategy guides governments and the respective emergency management partners in carrying out priorities aimed at strengthening Canada's ability to assess risks and to prevent and mitigate disasters. And within the strategy, there are three key components that are needed for developing resilience. And these three key components are researched and published everywhere throughout Australia, North America, in Canada, other countries and continents. And Rand out of the US has also done a lot of work in this research and kind of comes up with a similar Venn diagram. Hazardscape focuses on two of these components, which results in all three coming together to achieve resilience and agility. One, our non-directive coaching develops an empowerment mindset, an empowered team, and empowered organizations by helping teams and individuals see more opportunity and more solutions. We start to suppress that resource deficient attitude, and we start to develop an attitude of abundance. And we unite teams with a common terminology for developing better relationship intelligence. So how do we develop these three areas? Well, we're going to start with relationships. This is my core strengths deployment inventory. It's called the motivational value, the strengths motivational value model. I'm a red-green in this model, and I'm positioned here on the strengths deployment inventory triangle as what's called a red-green. So I'm going to go through some of these colors. So it's important to kind of remember the image of this triangle. You'll see the blue, the red, and the green. I want you to stick with that for a minute. I'm going to quickly explain here what all this means and how we focus on relationships. So to have good relationships in society with our stakeholders, our staff, those we work with, we need to have a common terminology, and this is the one I subscribe to through Core Strengths. And to improve relationships, we need to do some work recasting the past. We need to take time to understand people and our past experiences with them, because often we assume a lot, which leads to misjudgment, and we start to see the person through a very through a lens that's full of bias and not a lot of objectivity. With this model, we do a lot of work to reflect on our past experiences with people and the results we're getting, so we can better understand where they're coming from, because we need to co-create the future with them. People have expectations of each other. Sometimes we don't learn about those expectations until it's too late. And if we have a bad experience with a person, chances are we expect it to happen again. And if we have a positive relationship with someone or positive expectations, we're expecting those to also happen again, which can get us in trouble because, as we know, not everything works out the way we assume. So the hard work of recasting the past and co-creating the future is done in the present with everyone we work with. So developing your relationship intelligence means making authentic connections with other people. And this is where I spend a lot of time working with emergency management teams and groups and individuals on understanding how they can move through this process to understand people better, what motivates them, so they can start to understand why they're behaving the way they are. Through this work, we also have a process through the Results Action Planner. And, we go through this in our workshops and we fill this out. But over time, what it is it leaves you with a mental model and process that you can apply to any high stakes relationship. And while you might do it on paper at the start, this becomes a new behavior of starting to map out and understand what it is you want from a relationship, why it might not be going well, and how do you bring in new strengths that you may not have used in the past because they were too awkward for you, It helps you become aware of those strengths and how to use them a little bit more often to get the results you want. So to understand strengths, we have to realize that we tend to focus on the surface, on behavior, and from that we form judgments. But we need to understand the why about a person. We need to know what motivates them, what anchors them to be the person they are, so we can understand what strengths they're using in what situation. If you remember earlier, I talk about our empowerment and coaching is from a position of abundance. Well, we teach in core strengths that you have a strengths profile of 28 strengths. And while you may rely on a lot of strengths to get the results you're getting, there are strengths that you avoid because they feel awkward. And so core strengths, in comparison to a lot of other assessments and training and workshops out there, is 100% focused on the relationships that we have. You do some work on being an individual and using this from an individual lens, but really this is so far the only assessment and training like this that focuses on relationships. And so if you go back to the SDI triangle that I showed you, you notice that there was a red, a green, and a blue corner in the triangle. Well, we color code these three core motives to make it a little bit easier to remember. And we look at them in two instances. One, when things are going well for you, and two, when things are in conflict. And that could be conflict with other people and conflict within yourself. We're going to start by looking at the three core motives when things are going well. When they're going well, they are a blend of three. You will be able to access these motives within a spectrum at any time in any situation. And each one means something different. It's the three P's really. So blue is people, red is performance, and green is process. And I showed you earlier, I'm a red-green. And it's true. What I do is I focus quite a bit of my motivation for doing things is centered around performance and process. So a desire to achieve results and a drive to establish order. I still care about people. I still have a drive to help others. But again, that's motivated by my desire to want to achieve results and establish order and have control in place. So when you do this assessment, you'll notice up in the top there's a dot. This is where the assessment kind of shows where you land on this model. And we use a lot of the information that we get about your values and the other values of those you work with in order to help you define and know the difference between opposition and conflict. Because we know that when you're in opposition, you can still disagree and be productive. It's when the opposition gets personal, that's when we start to get in trouble. So the problem with opposition is issues are avoided for fear of conflict, and with conflict, it can damage relationships. The opportunity, however, is once your team or organization understand what opposition is, it can be a source of productive collaboration. And the opportunity when you can start to realize when conflict is happening is you can start to use the tools that we provide you to resolve and improve relationships. And I mentioned that your motivational value system happens in two instances: when things are going well and when there's conflict. Well, when there's conflict, your motivation value system sort of rejigs and you have an order of three rather than a blend of three. And for a lot of us, when we're in conflict, we might end up just accommodating the situation of the person, and we'll just kind of withdraw and go with the flow. A lot of us might take a first step and assert ourselves, or you'll also see people withdraw and maybe analyze the situation to formalize a plan. All of us go through these 3 steps in a slightly different order, but it's important to know what our behavior looks like when we're going through that order. Because I hear all the time from my clients, they might say so-and-so on my team just doesn't seem to be engaged, or they're just not participating in the meeting. Well, it's highly likely that if they're in conflict, they're analyzing the situation to kind of move themselves out of the conflict and back into opposition. So you don't want to assume that their withdrawal is disengagement, because that can lead you down to implementing and maybe bringing in the wrong solutions. If you know what a person on your team is going through in terms of their conflict sequence, it makes it a lot easier for you to understand their behaviors at the time. And that's what we do throughout this program. And just to wrap up here on relationships, the triangle is called the Strengths Deployment Inventory. We teach about strengths management. And you will get information on your top strengths, the ones that you use most often to get your results. But we also talk about middle strengths that are readily available to you, and you may use them dependent on the situation environment you're in. And we also talk about strengths at the bottom, which are ones you might avoid because they're too uncomfortable to use. And so during our work, we help you understand which middle strengths and bottom strengths are available, and how you can turn some of those strengths into top strengths to help get better results for the situation you're in. It's really about being aware of what you're doing and what you're using. And we correlate all of this back into our results action planner. So you can assess the strengths you're currently using and then identify new strengths to bring into the situation later. So that's it for relationships. The take-home message here is relationship intelligence is the application of knowledge in specific settings or contexts to produce results that are meaningful to the people in those relationships. And the purpose of the SDI, the Strength Deployment Inventory, is to improve the quality of working relationships. People have relationships within themselves, with each other, and within their work. And relationships are psychological connections over time. They have history, they have a present moment, and expectations for the future. I'll note that the core strength science has been in development for 40 years through a number of well-known psychologists, Elias Porter being the initial psychologist who developed it back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And today, Dr. Tim Scudder has taken over his work to develop core strengths and make it more relatable today. Over 2 million people have taken it. The evidence is clear. It's a very scientific, evidence-based model, and one that I rely on. And so when we look back at our Venn diagram, empowerment is next. So we've gone through relationships. Empowerment is next. We empower people, teams, and organizations using a coach approach. All too often, we forget that management is still 50% of emergency management. So if coaching is good management, coaching is good emergency management. And if you've seen my Coaching for Limited Budgets live stream, you'll recall that there are some core competencies that International Coaching Federation accredited coaches adhere to. And that video is available through my YouTube channel if you want to find it. But just really quickly here, we focus on foundational core competencies, co-creating the relationship with our clients and the teams we work with, communicating effectively, and cultivating learning and growth, all through a coach approach. Those competencies drive the Hazardscape coaching model, which we use as an iterative process to design our programs and post-incident coaching programs. The intake, that is where the post-incident report comes into play. We consider that report during the intake and while we work one-on-one with all of the parties involved, because our programs are user employee led. During the intake and design, we're doing a lot of work to understand the employee's perception of the post-incident report. Because as we all know, especially in governments or major corporations, you know, the post-incident report goes through many eyes. It gets, you know, washed over a lot. The communications teams get a hold of it. Stakeholder relation teams get a hold of it, and they massage a lot of the wording. And sometimes the recommendations or lessons identified don't always come out the same as how the staff interpreted them. So when I design a program with the team or an organization, I spend a lot of time with the individuals getting an understanding of their perception. Then we go in and design the program. It's a inquiry based. We start with a coaching methodology. Throughout the program, we are trying a lot of activities, testing a lot of things, coming back to reflect on the results, sharing those results and best practices, and we go through this cycle over a 3 to 6, even to a 1-year process. And then, of course, there's evaluation. We're constantly evaluating the post-incident coaching program to make sure that we're on track with what we wanted to get out of it. But we're also then doing an end of program evaluation where we leave with a team reflection that helps the team see the value that they've received from the program, so they can again connect it to themselves, connect it to their motivational value system, and connect it to their job so it means more, which leaves them more engaged and satisfied with what they're doing. And that is the point of post-incident coaching, because we know adults who learn under certain conditions, such as when they can use their own experience as the base for their work, and they're left to make their own decisions and guide their own work, we know that there's a higher probability of success. So really what we're doing through this process is shifting mindsets so that changes are implemented and sustained. And again, that comes to that empowerment piece. So the take-home message, organizations that adopt a coach approach, they develop empowered staff who are more resilient and agile, which means more effective teams through better relationships and communication. So eventually, a lot of the clients I work with, they become coaches themselves. As you're being coached, you start to adopt a coaching mindset. Some even go on to be accredited coaches, but when I work with individual and teams, they learn, work, and achieve expedited results. Because even when I'm not with them, I've had clients say they can hear my voice in the back of their head, which could be creepy or not, I don't know. They seem to be okay with it. But they hear the coaching questions, the open-ended what questions that help guide them in remembering to define success, to see more options and solutions than they initially perceived. And so that's why I say receiving coaching is also learning to coach. By using relationship intelligence and coaching, we're using scientific evidence-based tools to help develop resilience and agility. That's how we connect it back to the EM strategy. Those tools are core strengths, our coaching model, and that's how we move lessons identified to lessons observed or lessons learned in a team and group setting. So we empower through coaching. We develop the key relationships that are needed to move work forward and expedite results through core strengths. And after we move through these processes, our systems, our processes, the people we work with, become a little bit more resilient and a little bit more agile, which helps them to deal with changes, unexpected change, be more flexible, sort of ride the wave in the moment, because we're training their mindsets to be more agile, and then their relationships are more resilient because everybody knows how they're motivated. And when you start to have that insight about a person, your ability to develop empathy for them increases. And as you know, we've heard many times by many different people, way smarter than me, empathic leaders are the people that are going to get us through the future. So I'm really curious to know what part of this session resonated with you most. You can send me a quick email with feedback if you like, or add it into the comments. But I'd be really keen to hear what you think. And also, if you want the summary guide that comes with this, please feel free to email me at support@hazardscape.com. Willing to chat with you. And again, you can send your request for the Zoom Q&A on September the 9th. I'll get that out to you. So I don't know if there's any questions in the comments, but I'll just take a quick look. And if you do have any questions that you want me to answer right now, I'm more than happy to do that. Or again, you can contact me one-on-one. But I'll see if I know it takes a little bit time for comments to pop up on the screen. Thanks, Shannon. Yes, you can relate to that desire to have order, 100%. That is a big part of a lot of people. And if they don't have that process or order or feeling of control established and well understood, then that leads them to withdrawing, which really they're just sitting back and analyzing the situation. And so, you know, oftentimes managers see that withdraw as disengagement and they start to get very worried. However, that's not the case at all. The staff member is still very engaged. They're just so engaged, they're trying to analyze the moment to come up with some solutions. So thanks for that comment. All right, so I will leave it at that. I appreciate everyone joining in for this talk. Again, contact me about the Q&A. I'll have those summary guides ready for you and emailed out. And if you have any questions in the meantime, or you want to talk more about this, reach out at any time you like. Really appreciate you spending time on this live stream today. And as always, I'll double check for one last comment here. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, we'll chat. As always, when you can, stay connected with those you need to work with. Relationships are more than collecting the business card at a conference. We need to do a lot more work to develop the relationships that are going to get us through the future. Thanks, Donna. Thanks, Shannon. Thanks, everyone. And again, stay connected.